This is Ramon Mejia from the LitRPG Podcast, just giving you a quick intro into this wonderful interview I had with Dakota Krout, author of the Dungeon-Born series. He had a chance to talk to me. It was initially going to be a 15-minute announcement interview, turned into this massive, almost 2-hour conversation between him and myself as LitRPG nerds, talking about his game mechanics, him trying not to spoil his second book too much for the audience, but at the same time giving you details about how his characters are doing in the story. His second book is going to be called Dungeon Madness. It is going to be available sometime in February 2017. That's a tentative date for him. He still has to work on editing and getting his cover art in for the project before he puts it up. He is thinking about doing a pre-order contest for his novel when he gets a little close to February. So keep an eye out for that on his Facebook page and Twitter and anywhere else you could find the guy. Again, it's going to be Dungeon Madness, tentative release date of February 2017. Go enjoy the interview. Hey, everybody. My name is Ramon Mejia. I'm the host of the LitRPG Podcast. And today I have the honor of talking to one of my favorite authors, a good guy. I like to consider him a close personal friend that I've never met. He is the author of the Dungeon-Born series. Here, I have a copy of his book right here. He was nice enough to send it to me. He's a best-selling author in both fantasy and epic fantasy. He actually beat out Game of Thrones for a little while on the Amazon bestseller list, so that's a thing to be very proud of. He's here talking about his upcoming second book. Welcome to the podcast, Dakota Krout.
Hey, Ramon, it's really good to be back. And thank you. The honor is all mine for talking to you here. So thank you for that lovely introduction.
No problem. I actually generally enjoy talking to authors of works that I like. It's really fun. It's fun for me, and I think it's fun for the audience and your readers to get a peek into your mind and just kind of feel like they're having a conversation with you as well. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me. Now, before we begin talking about book 2, I should say, I want to talk a little bit about book 1, give your readers a chance to catch up on the wonderfulness that is the first book. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself first as an author, and then give us a little recap about book 1?
Sure. So I'm obviously an author that kind of got sucked into the RPG genre, and eventually I just had to make my own stories. I am in my very last semester of college right now. I have one class once a week for 1 hour, but it's a mandatory class. So I'm a full-time e-commerce and web developer. I'm a programmer. I actually do like the difficult stuff, not the graphical stuff. So let's see. I just got out of the military. I was in the Army for 8 years. So I just got an honorable discharge. And down to working just one job now. So I'm really, really excited to have a lot of time to write, and I'm using it. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that nice recap of who you are as an author. I actually didn't know that you were still in college for your last semester. And I can't see you doing one job anymore. You have your college thing, you have the writer thing, and you have like regular work stuff. So I count that as multiple jobs, in my opinion. So it's really super impressive that you continue to write at the pace that you do, in addition to being a family man and all that regular stuff. Okay, on to our next topic. Could you your first book, which is Dungeon-Born, again the Divine Dungeon. I really loved it. It was very unique. It's kind of subgenre of LitRPG, which is like a dungeon master type of story. For the audience, can you tell them a little bit about the type of story that you decided to write in that first book, and kind of a brief synopsis of what that happened in book 1?
Sure. So I'll try not to spoil the book for anyone who hasn't read it. And if you haven't, you really should. I mean, I really like the book, and I hope that everyone else does as well. So the first book was about a dungeon that slowly gains sentience, and he does his best to get stronger, more powerful as quickly as possible. And the best way to do that, of course, has always been for there's kind of a symbiotic relationship for adventurers and the dungeon. The adventurers will go into dungeons to get strong, like to get powerful, to get powerful items, to make a lot of money. It's a full-time job for a lot of people. Whereas the dungeon gets stronger by the same way they do, which is absorbing essence. And the fastest way for him to gain essence is actually to kill off adventurers. Um, and so the adventurers try and kill the dungeon's monsters, and the dungeon's monsters try to kill the adventurers. And either way, someone gets stronger off that deal. Um, and in the first book, Cal does pretty well, and he works very hard to come up with interesting ways to fight interesting monsters, and a few bad puns. So there's a second main character, which is one of the adventurers, which is Dale. And a lot of people seem to think that he's one of that he is the main character, but he's not. So terrible things can happen to non-main characters. Terrible things can happen to main characters. Just look at Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And
that's George R. R. Martin.
Right. And so the first book, I think was a really good start to the series, and I think that it's done really well. And I'm going to try and make sure that the second book continues like that, because nobody wants terrible sequels.
No, I absolutely agree. Nobody wants terrible sequels, but there is a special challenge and almost a pressure in making your second book as good as the first one, especially once people have started reading your first book and they really enjoy it. It's like, so not just me and like this, now to satisfy somebody else's sort of expectations of what this story is going to be about as well.
Right. And that is a little nerve-wracking, and that has pushed back the publication date of the second book quite a bit, as I work to, not over-engineer it, I guess would be the way to put it. Because there's a lot of stuff where I'll look at it later and I'll be like, man, I'm really trying to take myself a little too seriously there. I need to lighten up. Because otherwise people are going to be like, oh, well, you had a 5-star first book, but this is 2 or 1. No, I want to.
This thing got dark. It's weird.
Yeah, it got dark. No, I'm trying to keep it fun, but also true to the original premise, which is
no. I'm sorry. I literally I understand exactly what you're saying, man. In the end of my first book, it gets a little dark, and I'm finding as I'm writing it now, I'm like, how do I go back to the light place where I can make a bunch of references and jokes and people can laugh a little bit, because it's kind of dark right now, and I'm trying to find that pathway towards that balance point again.
Right.
So okay, so now you told us about your first book. It's a story of a dungeon getting sentience, and you kind of pull from a lot of RPGs and video game stories where adventurers go dungeon diving. You're telling the opposite side of that coin story, the dungeon's point of view for a lot of this. Your main character, Cal, was a human. He was killed by a necromancer. This is not really spoiler, folks. This is in the first bit of the first book. And his soul becomes trapped in a soul gem, and that becomes the core of a newly created dungeon. But because he was a human, he kind of has an edge on the other dungeons in the world. He has that intelligence and sort of a peek into his former life. Although he's not consciously aware of any of his memories as a human, he can kind of pull ideas from that more advanced level of sentience that he used to have. Now with him, and to me, she's almost as main of a character as the actual dungeon, is Demi. She's a will-o-wisp. She's a dungeon guide for Cal in his initial phases, and she kind of just becomes also a friend, a companion, and in crime. As they murder, as they absorb the essence of the unwary adventurers.
I like to think of it as out surviving the adventurers. Yep. Out surviving, yeah. But that's a good point. So for the second book here, a lot of people when they read the first book, I try very hard to read every review, and after the first 100, I kind of stopped responding on Amazon, but I still read them. but on my Facebook page, just so you know, I do try and respond to every single person. So if you do have a comment for me, please, swing over there and um, I'll definitely respond. But with Danny, a lot of the comments mentioned that they really wanted to see Danny have a more active role in the second book, and I took that to heart, and she certainly does. I don't think it's going to be what people expect though, so it's going to be uh, a nice little game that we play.
Well, that sounds very fascinating and possibly very frustrating. But I understand what you're kind of talking about. But I didn't know I could respond to Amazon like reviews or comments. I don't think I want to do that. It seems like a bad rabbit hole for me to fall into. Respond to the Facebook messages the same way that you do. Now going back to Danny's role in the story, I have a similar character. I find that out. I think about it. Our characters kind of our stories in many ways kind of parallel each other in some of their character portions of it. We both have guidance characters. Mine's a fairy named Mary. Yours is Danny the Will-O-Wisp. And I'm kind of curious. I know your wife's name is Danielle.
Yes.
Danny, her by chance?
Yeah.
Because I know Mary the fairy is my wife in her like personality and like
yes,
sassy kind of comebacks. So I'm curious.
Danny, in the first book especially, is based off my wife, and
that's why I like her so much. Okay.
Yep, she's a sweetheart. The second book, she's a little more vicious, and that's not my wife, but I had to change up the character just a little bit to fit the storyline.
That's your disclaimer right there. If she's vicious, she's not my wife. If she's adorable and lovable, that's totally my wife.
Exactly. That's it to a T right there. Yeah, but I want to tell you all about it, but I had to wait until the book is out.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. But I understand that a lot of, especially female readers, I found connect with these female characters more than they do with the dudes, and that's the case with my story as well. I've had people kind of write in and say, "I love this character. She's so funny and adorable. I want to see more of her." And I think that just kind of feeds into understanding that our audience in the LitRPG community isn't just a bunch of dudes. They're also females and or guys who like strong female characters. Sure. And so I think exploring those personality types doesn't just benefit the story, but it also gives people a place of connection within your story because they see either aspects of themselves or aspects of the people that they might like to be. And I think that's part of the draw of the genre in general, is that some of it is very much wish fulfillment in that I wish I was this character, or I wish I could go to this kind of world and do these kind of things.
Right. And something that I think helps me in my writing is that I do try to avoid classical stereotypes of what LitRPG could be. So the whole anime thing where a guy sees a girl and just shoots blood out of his nose or whatever like that. Like I try very hard to avoid tropes like that because it's not.
I'm kind of curious how somebody would write that in a book instead of like the visual, because it's a very visual game. I'm kind of
yeah. I've seen it in a few of them. Yeah. But stuff like that. Like I try to treat every character as I would in real life, like that is to say that, for one thing, not everyone agrees with my main character. A lot of the time, people are like, "No, you're an idiot. Just stop." At the end where a lot of books are like, "All right, we'll go and fight the main big bad guy. We're gonna go and we're gonna take him out." And in my case, Dale would be turned into particles if that were to happen. Just things I try to avoid. What's the word? Well, I try to maintain that there are rules to the world, and if you break those rules, bad things are going to happen to you. And I mean, one of those rules is a social aspect, where if you try and get people to do things that they don't want to do, they're going to retaliate violently at you. And that's just a fact of realistic life.
So. No, and I like that about your story. You have there are always going to be those rigid game mechanics within a LitRPG story that are really important, in my opinion. Some authors are really light on them, and they don't really follow their own rule sets sometimes in their world, and that makes that feels less genuine, because a lot of
Right.
our genre basically draws from RPG games, tabletop and video games, and those rules are coded into that world literally. And for you to break them usually breaks the game and makes it not function. And so there are real consequences if you go against those rules. And that's the part of what draws people into the genre in general, that there's a world where the rules make sense. And if you understand them,
Right.
you can exploit them. You can't break them necessarily, but you can sometimes bend them and use them to your own benefit. And the same idea applies to your social rules, which is also very
Right.
true within our regular universe. And
Mhm.
that there's very stratified and concrete social rules that you do not bend or break, because there are social consequences to
Right.
those things. Whether or not people realize that they're set up that way, they really do exist
Oh
on a
yes.
level of social interaction. And so the fact that you incorporate those things in your story, and it's not just, oh, the hero gets whatever he wants because he has a charisma check or whatever,
Right.
really does make sense. And it makes the world feel more fleshed out and real, and not two-dimensional, the way it can be in some people's book, especially when the authors are coming from other universes and they're coming to
Mhm.
LitRPG, they don't always understand that particular aspect of it.
Right. And yeah, like you said, yeah, and like you said, with females looking for strong female role characters. Um, See, I would say that most of the most powerful people in my stories are women. Like for instance, if you read the book, there's Madame Chandra, there's the Dark Elf Princess Brianna, and the Portal Mage leader, which is Amber.
Mhm.
And as it turned out, like I didn't put that in there for like a gimme or like a let's draw in females or anything like that. I put that in there because that's the names of my sisters. um, so I wanted to
Are they by chance your older sisters?
yes, it goes Amber, Brianna, Chandra, Dakota,
Yeah.
ABCD.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Like, especially if you're putting them in roles of like superior power, and without
Right.
even thinking about it, it's like, oh yeah, they're probably his older sisters, and he's looked at them as figures of authority most of his life.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. But no, they are. I mean, they're obviously my family's important to me. But like I'm not looking for a gimme. I'm not looking to say, hey, I'm putting in a strong female role model because that's what people are looking for. I'm doing it because it fits my story. You
Right.
know, um, they fit in and they fit into their positions of power and they use it as anyone else would, which is just realistic. They aren't like like I don't know, characters that are going to be big and sexy and sultry and oh let's draw in the character. No, it's I mean that's not a part of this. This is a work camp. Like basically like the city around the dungeon. That entire place is filled with people that are there risking their lives every day trying to um, kill things and not be killed and get money. And most of them are sorry if it's a little spoiler, but the portal, that's set up in town that allows them to say, hey, I don't want to live here. And so I'm just going to come back when I can get access to the dungeon. So that's what I'm going to do. And that actually becomes a point of contention in book number 2. Is
Yeah.
that it's just people that are there killing and there's no other infrastructure. There's like
Oh yeah, they're not keeping the local economy alive with the dungeon anymore as they were in the past. So now all the money's flowing out into the portal. Basically, is that what
exactly,
happens? Yeah. Okay. That's what
basically
I.
yes, and
Yeah.
and
So
they
basically,
did
real worldish economics.
right, and I tried to alter that in the book, and Dale does have more of a leading role in this book. He is I would say about 50-50 perspective. So whereas before it was more, I'd say 70-30. Cal is the one
No.
focused on. But Cal is still the main character, and everything is from his first person perspective when he is speaking. And Dale is still third person. So there's no I as Dale. So like I, Dale, am going to do this. No, it's like Dale is going off to do this, and he did this, and he's an idiot for doing it. Um,
Okay. And I'm kind of curious, like, because without getting too spoiler at the end of it, does Dale communicate with Cal the dungeon as he's doing his journey? Is that an aspect? Because that to me would imply that Cal gets more than 30% of the book. I understand that 30% would be his direct point of view
Mhm.
as like a stacked dungeon. But if he's traveling along with Dale in some aspect, I feel like that would give him slightly more than that 30% kind of viewpoint.
So that is assuming that Dale wants to talk to Kale, and that's kind of the issue. Um, that's actually one of the main points in the next book. Not non spoilers, but at the end of the first book, yes, Dale can speak to Cal, and he's one of. I mean, he's basically the only person that can, the only human that can at this point. He's like, oh my god, am I going insane? There's someone talking to me and trying to trip me up and trying to like distract me as things are flying at my head. That sort of thing, like I think that a common misconception is that they're going to get along, and uh,
Oh, you mean they're not going to be buddy buddies at the beginning? I mean, that's realistic. But
at the
if I suddenly sound a voice
beginning,
in my head, I don't know that I would like it there in the first place.
right?
I'm assuming that's going to be a whole arc in the storyline, so I don't
Yes,
want to force you to talk about it.
it'll
But
be
I see
it's
so
pretty
many
fun.
possibilities there. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, basically, think of it as there's someone that you're with all the time. Like, okay, so outside the dungeon, I'll say this: outside the dungeon, Cal and Dale can't talk unless Dale wants it to happen, because it's a two-way street. Like outside of the dungeon, Cal just doesn't have enough focused. Basically aura, like he basically can't speak to Dale because there's no real connection between them, at least not a strong enough one to exploit. But inside the dungeon, Dale just has no choice but to listen to Cal ramble on. So it will be a very fun ride for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I just realized, like, we're already talking about book two, and I forgot to ask the name or the release date of it.
Oh,
So
yes,
let's do that real quick before we start actually getting into any more
sure.
into book two.
Okay, so it is the second book in the series, so it is the Divine Dungeon, and the title of this book is Dungeon Madness. So yes, not Dungeons Madness. That was something someone else had questioned a couple of times, but it is Dungeon Madness, as in like a noun, not a verb, basically. Yeah. So I'm
As in,
fairly certain.
madness caused, no, as in madness caused by the dungeon. Like I'm
There you
going
go.
crazy because the
Yes.
dungeon. Okay, I want to make
Yes.
sure that's clear because yeah, it's slightly ambiguous, but your titles are always kind of like that because you have multiple meanings within your stories that are revealed
Right.
eventually. So okay, I
Right.
get that.
And this one certainly does have many, many meanings, and people are going to think throughout the whole book, they're like, "Oh, this is what the Dungeon Madness is. That's what he's talking about." And then, closer to the end, it's going to be like, "Oh, well, this particular one actually was the Dungeon Madness." And then people are, "Oh man, so close, had it, almost had it." So it'll be pretty fun.
I hope so. And your release date currently is February 2017 as a tentative date, as a
Yes.
tentative month, sometime in there, hopefully,
Yes.
as you get some things worked out, like cover art and editing
Yep.
stuff. All
Yep.
that gets worked out.
Yes.
Hopefully, it'll be out by February of 2017. So
Yes.
I'm
That
looking forward to
that's
reading it.
Yep, that's my current. You're gonna get a book, right? I mean, in the mail, it's gonna show up, so don't even worry about it. But yeah, right. Yeah, the release date I'm trying for February. I'm gonna try and get it as close to the start of February as I can. Um, and basically at this point, I'm doing a little bit of rewriting still. The book is basically done. There's a little bit more that I'm going to add on, like a little bit of padding. But I need some editing. I need my cover art, and at that point, um, when I have those things done, there's going to be a 2 week period where the subscribers to my newsletters, um, on my Facebook page, there's a tab, basically, the whole Insta freebie thing, where my I'll tell you about that after this. You'll enjoy setting your own up. But there's my mailing list. Anyone that's subscribed to it is going to be able to read the first 3 chapters 2 weeks before my book actually comes out. Um, and then during that time, basically on your recommendation, I may have a pre-order set up so that at the very end of that 2 week period, boom, book goes live, everyone gets access right away. So hopefully that's coming up real quick. So like you said, tentative release date is February, as early in February as I can make it happen. And otherwise, just follow the newsletter or Facebook page or whatever for updates.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I totally I got so into the conversation with you, I forgot about those little things. I'll make sure to add them at the beginning so nobody forgets about it. But going back to your book two, okay, so we've kind of gotten into it unintentionally a little bit. Can you give us, your readers and myself, an idea of what book two is about? So we know book one establishes Cal as a dungeon. We know that Dale is a human who discovers that dungeon as it's developing. He kind of takes over ownership of the surrounding land point of it, so he becomes like a leader in building a new dungeon town, and that's kind of his portion of the story. Cal has a companion named Danny, who is very familiar and witty and interesting, who kind of guides him through those first levels of what it means to be a dungeon and some of his powers. She kind of reveals the game mechanic side of his existence, and he kind of takes advantage of it, does an amazing job of increasing his power, his monster levels, and it's a really fun journey as far as like exploring what it would actually mean for a dungeon to be created if it had sentience, and how it would pit its own intelligence and its own experience against the adventurers coming in. And that's kind of the back and forth that I think I like the most in the story. That kind of core idea of this is what you do in video games, but from the other side of the coin.
Right.
And so we've discovered that. And at the end of book one, it's not really a spoiler, Dale kind of strikes it rich. He wins the lottery in discovering the dungeon. Dungeon Town becomes a big, massive thing, and he kind of takes the place of leadership and influence in deciding who has access to this dungeon as a resource. So that's book one, if that's a decent summary for you.
Sure.
How do we go from book two then?
So book two is a little bit different there. So like we talked about, there's an economical side to it, where there's a lot of money leaving, but not much staying, or not much going to other people. Now, something that is a fact of life, basically, no matter where you are, is that if you have resources or if you have land, well, you're taxed on them. So if you have, for instance, a gold mine, well, guess what? I bet you your taxes are going to be a little bit higher, aren't they? Now, if you have hundreds of thousands of gold coins pouring out from where you are and none of it staying there, are you going to have some issues when tax times comes around? Well, another fact of life is that a lot of people don't like being taxed. So if you were to, say, impose a tax on people, well, you might have some fun with that. But basically, in the first book, it's the area that the land is on is described as a kind of a contentious point between two different kingdoms. It's a mountain that's in a mountain range that is a barrier between these two mountains, and both of them claim ownership. So what if both of them are trying to tax you? So you see that there might be some issues there. So the second book, it starts out with a bit of city building, not so much the nitty gritty, but more like, oh my gosh, we have a serious crime problem. Oh my gosh, there's literal crap in the streets. Like, what is going on here? Why is no one doing anything about this? Oh right, I, Dale, own the land. I'm the one that has to do something about this? Are you kidding me? Fine, whatever. Well, all right, let's see what happens. And then, well, politics. You're not going to be able to please anyone, or everyone at least. I'm sure some people will be happy, but some people will not. So it starts out with a bit more creating defenses, creating systems for maintenance and for things like that, because there's rumors of war. So being a bit more protected might not be a terrible idea. Having some defenses, having some people guarding you, maybe wouldn't be a bad idea. A police force, perhaps. But very quickly, so the first chapter currently is a little dry. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Like, I don't want it to be like an economics lesson. So basically, I do a little tiny bit of hand waving there, and I say, hey, let's hire a city administrator. So it's not going to be Dale out there like with a measuring stick and all right, the roads are 2 inches too
So
short.
chapter 1 is
Yeah,
not Dale filling out paperwork the
no.
entire time, then, basically. So
Can you imagine?
that's a plus. So.
All right, yeah. All right, well, I'm a powerful mage, and and my job for the next 3 chapters is paperwork. I don't think that would make for fun reading. Um,
No, I have a guy in my book in like one of the interludes. That's what all he does for a job, and he becomes an evil bad guy.
right. Well,
So I'm
I
like, okay,
can't
yeah,
blame him. But no, yeah. There's definitely people out there that will fulfill those roles for him. But I just try and put that in place because otherwise, you're missing a critical section of things, and that is where are the adventurers that are going into the dungeon to die off? Where are they
right.
staying? Like, what are they doing to contribute? Why is Dale broke all the time? Um, and that's kind of thing. Like, hey, I'm reading this, and this guy is selling things for thousands and thousands of gold, and you'd think like, hey, question, why isn't he just filthy rich and retired at this point? And I try and address that by saying that
Yep.
everyone's in debt. Everyone is in debt. So,
Yeah,
um,
his income goes up, but so do his bills, just like the
yep,
rest of us.
yep,
So it sounds like the first part, I should say, an expansion in the story. Um, the city building aspects of it kind of become more resource, like RTS, more than RPG, I
right,
should say, like real time strategy, building a particular cities to fill different needs, keep your citizens happy. Or with other nations, deal with taxes from neighboring cities and diplomacy stuff, which is really fun for some people. And I kind of seen that this also happened in the other dungeon series on Amazon, the slime dungeon, the same kind of aspect. And it seems like a natural progression of like, yes, I can tell the story of the dungeon itself, but that's kind of limiting. And
it
the
is.
larger outside world has its own mechanics. So I'm kind of curious, like,
Yes.
what does Dale in book 2 actually have, like those real-time strategy resource powers? Like I know he has the power to banish somebody, and that's part of the, I guess, contract magic of him owning the land.
Mm-hmm.
But does he have like powers to, I guess, like from a gamer standpoint, to automatically tax people, or to set up resources to automatically go to certain locations, automatic, like those taxes then distribute to like land management or garbage disposal, whatever it is, on a percentage basis, or some of those more gamey real-time strategy things.
Right. So at the start, no, he does not. He can say, hey, do this or leave, and that tends to get things done. But one of the things that I kind of alluded to, I believe, in at the end of the first book, was that this area, since it is so contentious, neither side would really push for, say, control without going to war with the other kingdom, right?
Okay,
So
like those two larger kingdoms that are arguing over that location.
right.
Okay.
So this kind of becomes Switzerland. Like this place kind of becomes a place for nobles and other people like that to come as not so much as a vacation point, but as a, hey, let's go there and be able to intermingle without the over looming threat, right?
And the
So
location, so you're literally made Dale's land Switzerland.
basically,
I think that's pretty.
yeah. And it's there's some things in there, but he does as the owner of the land, he does have the right to tax the property and stuff like that. But there's only so much you can do without permission of the kingdom, right? So Dale has to work to do that. Like it's not long, it's not dry. It's more like a, hey, you had a noble come in and start whipping someone, and I had no power to stop him without making him leave. So can you guys do something about that? And they'd be like, they'd say, oh, well, maybe. And eventually it becomes, oh, dang, we'd better, or else people are going to start dying. That sort of thing.
Okay, so
yeah.
it seems like you're, instead of giving them,
I'm really trying to dance around the subject,
no,
and
no.
I'm like,
okay, I know.
right.
This is me being like a gamer nerd, and like I wanted to understand the mechanics of your world, because this is what I do with LitRPG. I love all those minutia details and all the game mechanics when they're explained, and all the skill trees and everything. Because in my mind, I plan my characters, and I plan
exactly
what would I do if I was in this world the same way I do in the video game. And I guess one of the curious things, like, from what you're telling me is like Dell doesn't have artificial game magic,
Mhm.
like the dungeon does. Basically,
Right.
he has to use social influence. He has to use artificially constructed cultural things like
Right.
laws and a
And
garrison
more than anything
and
else, money.
you know
More than
money
anything, it's
is
money. Yep.
yeah, money is always a big influencer.
Yes.
And I'm kind of curious, like within your game world, because you kind of mentioned that he doesn't have these powers because neither one of these two opposing kingdom wants to give them to him, like if they exist in the world, or if he would be better almost establishing his own kingdom, and then magically kind of gaining all that power that maybe a king would, or if it exists, like the ability to like just say, I'm taxing everybody at 5%, and it
Right.
just automatically deducted from their gold badge or something.
Right.
If that exists in the world, or if it's just strictly in the entire world, it's just a social structure, the same way we have in our world, where it's either agreed upon and people follow them because of social norms, and of course influenced by people with big sticks,
Mhm.
or in a key way.
Right. Well, for the taxation portion, it does come down to contract magic. Basically,
Okay.
it is basically saying, hey, if you want to use the dungeon, you're gonna have to sign up. You're gonna have to sign here before you go in, agreeing that you pay X amount. Um, so it's less of a hey, we hope, and more of a hey, this is gonna happen, or you're not gonna stick around. Um,
Okay, so that's your stick. The contract magic then is the thing that
yes,
kind of emulates game mechanics in that real
yes.
time strategy kind of way. Okay, that's
Right.
cool. I like
Because,
that's kind of insightful.
and just like everything else, that sort of thing is going to have consequences. And now, so we're kind of focusing a bit on Dale here, and like I said, he's not the main focus. He's just how the book starts.
Right.
And um, Cal is the main focus, but he in the first book had most of his building, like
Right.
something that I describe here in the second book is actually the size and the scale of things that he is doing. And in the first book, it talks about how the first floor has 4 rooms, right? So it has tunnels and 4 rooms, and that's anyone. I mean, you could say, hey, I have a hallway to my 9 by 12 room. In this, it's like, okay, so I'm making this floor, and this floor is an open space with half of a square mile of free space because we're deeper in the mountain. Well, how much actual room is that? And that's a shit ton of room, pardon my language. And so I'm able to more accurately describe things in this one and say, hey, here's what's happening. Here's the scale that we're looking at. Even though I don't have 50 levels in my dungeon, yeah, it takes between 3 and 6 hours to go from floor 1 to the bottom and back out. It's not a super fast process.
Right.
Um, Right. And with Cal, I mean, obviously there's a lot more monsters. There's new things that he makes, new systems, and I also try very very hard not to overpower either him or Dale. There was a review I read recently that made me happy. It said, "I really really hope that by the end of book 3, neither of them are at the god tier or whatever." And yeah, it's not going to happen because the first book had a time frame of something like 8 months or less. And it's described in the book that getting into the mage ranks can take anywhere for a human, and can take anywhere from um 30-40 years to 200. And
Right, and that's because you're not using that same level mechanic system like a regular RPG game. You use
right,
cultivation,
right.
which implies intense concentration, study.
Intent, yes.
It's more like a martial arts skill,
Yes.
spiritually, than it is like a
Yes.
leveling game mechanic.
Right. And that's really kind of what it comes down to, is what you said, is willpower and focus. And something else about going into these ranks is, as you move through them, what you're actually doing is you're pushing your body beyond its current limits, which is a very very painful thing to do. If you I'm sure all of us have worked out at one point or another. Um, and if you push yourself to your limits, obviously, holy crap, that's painful. if you push beyond your limits, that's really painful.
Yep.
And what they're trying to do all the time is push beyond their own limits, which for a thought form like Cal, not so bad. He doesn't exactly have nerves, so that's not like a boom, oh, ow sort of thing. It's like a, oh crap, I might explode or die because I'm doing too much at once, and then he'll have to kind of push back a little bit. Whereas with like Dale and the adventurers, like breakthroughs in rank are incredibly painful. I describe the transition to the mage rank in my book, and it's not any of the main characters. They're just discussing it. They don't actually like. They might not. I'm not saying for sure, but they discuss what actually happens, and how I describe that is that I'm sorry, my dog just attacked my foot. Um, how I describe that is that you know when you have that transition from essence to mana, what happens in your body is that all the bonds of your body that are held with essence are instead replaced with bonds of mana. And the reason that there are so few mages in the world is because what literally happens is that a wave of energy goes through your body slowly, ripping it apart and putting it back together. And molecule by molecule, obviously, this is not a pleasant feeling. This is something that people need to work very hard to get to. Plus, just getting to the point where you can do that is extremely difficult. So, hard. It's really interesting, and in my own
Yeah,
opinion,
that first phase of transition almost reminds me of like what it would be like if you were doing like the teleporter system from Star Trek, only
right,
because of your mind and willpower.
right,
How difficult it would be. Like technology in Star Trek kind of does the magic. Oh, this is what happens. We take you apart atom by atom, and we else. But in this case,
mhm,
it your willpower and mana doing the exact same thing. Only there's no technology involved, so it's it's infinitely more difficult and challenging and
right,
painful.
right. And I try to emphasize that this is not a process that should be taken lightly, and it's also not a process that happens quickly. I'm not going to throw Cal, or not Cal, but I'm not going to say Dale, hey, you're in the D ranks today, but you know what? 2 chapters later, you're going to be in the C ranks. No, there's people that have been working at that for 20, 30 years, and they're still having trouble. Um, it's it makes things more interesting, in my opinion,
Right. No, he
because
definitely has an advantage in that he has a pure mana because of his connection
yes,
to the deck and
yes,
everything, but it's still a process. So he has a slight advantage, but it's not so overwhelming that he becomes one punch man and he's all
exactly.
powerful.
Yes. And that's a very good way of putting it. Like he has his own limitations, and it's not like the Superman limitations. It's not like, oh man, there's this one thing that's rare that can stop me, and oh man, suddenly I'm useless. No,
No,
it's
he's more like Batman in that he has to
yeah,
train, he has to work hard,
right.
and even if he has the advantage of being intelligent, or in this case,
Hmm.
lucky in his
Yeah,
connection to the dungeon, basically, he still has to work his butt off just like everyone else.
right. And another factor there is how much time does he actually have to go and cultivate? Like if he
Yes,
has other requirements on his time, then he can't spend
right.
12 to 15 hours a day sitting in high concentrated essence to get stronger. Um,
Right, which is the cost of power. Whenever you become a leader or a rich dude, you have people under you. All your time goes to there instead of your own, self improvement. Sometimes.
exactly, and that's kind of how I'm limiting him. Like I'm trying to think of other ways to describe it so it sounds more fun. But it is very fun, and like I describe this in a logical manner, but in the book I describe it in a much more fun manner. Like, hey, you just broke through a rank, and I see that your eyes are bleeding because you burst some capillaries there. Are you feeling okay? Oh yeah, I'm
Oh yeah,
great. Yeah, yeah.
that
It just
sounds super fun.
yeah, like, hey, my body is falling apart right now because I did a little too much, but I feel a little stronger. Like, hey, all right, I can lift an extra 3 pounds. Like, yeah, it worked out for me. And it really is fun. And I really hope that I get a lot of feedback. I hope that people are like, hey, I liked this, I didn't like this. I want to see this, I don't want to see this, because I love that because I try to use everything that I can. And I actually had a fun little contest on my Facebook page a couple of months ago, where I said, hey, I want two people to give me um, what they want a character to be. I want their name, I want their race, I want their affinities, I want some backstory on them. Right? I basically made them roll up a character,
Yeah.
and I said, whoever gets the most likes, whoever gets the most likes, two of those, that person will go in the book, and then my favorite will go in the book. Like who I think is the most, you know, fits the storyline the best. And I had to play with their backstories a little bit in order to make them fit. Because some people, they came on and they're like, hey, I want this super overpowered person that does nothing but, complain. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Like, there's just no way. Like,
Okay.
now if you're there, you're there because you're gonna fight for a living. You're gonna work for a living. Like, there's no lazy adventurers, at least not for long.
Yeah, so Goku doesn't come visit
No.
The dungeon. Okay. Just
And no,
making sure.
that would be a really good like explanation of one of the characters that was submitted, but it was basically Goku. And it made me laugh, but I tried to use actually as many as I could, at least give them cameos. And then those two winners were two winners. Sorry, my pinky got up there. Those two winners. There we go. Got characters that are world affecting is how I put it. Like there was one that someone said they wanted basically a crazy dungeon lady, like someone who basically walks in and everyone thinks she's insane and she just goes nuts for a while and is fun. And I used her and then I altered her and then she became a main storyline character. And there was another one. I think his name was Ian submitted. Basically, he just wanted a one-off character that died in a specific way, and
Now, if he can kill anybody,
yeah,
that's cool.
exactly. Yeah, it can kill anyone off. But that one was really fun to write actually because it made Dale be like, what the hell is going on? Like, where are these freaking weirdos coming from? Like, we need to like maybe check people's mental state before we let them in this area. And
that's happened to me though. Like in my story, where our character I tended to kill off becomes so interesting that I keep them along. Like Mary, the fairy guide wasn't meant to be past level 3 of the character. Like she was meant to just be a guide for a while and then disappear magically.
Right.
But my wife was like, no, you can't get rid of Mary. Like,
Right.
So I kept her along, and I actually had to create a secondary love interest in Sonia, because my wife was like, nope, she has to stay, and you can't have them hook up. That'll ruin things.
Right.
And
well, I
it was
mean,
only-
a human
yeah.
and fairy, and I mean, you did pretty well, and I like how you balanced her because she was like you kind of took away her abilities, like when you introduced her a second time as a
Yeah.
continuous character. Sorry if that's a spoiler at all, but
I know.
but yeah, I really liked how you did that, because otherwise, she would have walked on stage and been like, oh hey, well, I either had to be super lazy and not do anything, or I have to, I had to become weaker just to stay in the story. And I think you did a really good job of balancing. So nice work on that. Oh,
that
and
whole
yes,
thing was like a restart of like, okay, my wife decided she wanted the character, so now I have to make her work within the actual group and not be OP. And that's how I did it. So I'm like, oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and
keeping characters you didn't mean to.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of keeping characters you weren't supposed to and your wife forcing you to, Dale is supposed to be dead. Like, Dale is not supposed to be. He was never meant as a main character. He was meant as.
Really?
Oh no, he was meant as someone that I could kill off for funsies. And
yeah, because at the beginning he sounds really whiny, and I thought, oh, this guy's gonna die. He's not gonna survive.
Right.
He's gonna get too greedy or something, and someone's gonna off him, or he's gonna go to the dungeon for this time. He's just gonna die, and that's what I thought was gonna happen when I first met him.
Right. And a fun thing I did in the first book was I didn't even give him a name until he distinguished himself as a character. At which point, he said, "No, my name is Dale." And then he walks away and comes back later as a figure, and slowly, he slowly gains. I mean, he's in his 20s, but 20 years old versus people that are in their late 80s and still look 30. That you're still pretty young. and it's I'm sure anyone can tell you that people with powerful personalities tend to roll over you when they speak. And
Yeah.
so Dale started out a bit whiny, but yeah, he had to step up if he wanted to survive. Because if I kept writing him and I got sick of him, I was gonna kill him off. And so yeah, okay, so it's a bit of a spoiler in for the book one there, but but I mean, like, that's just I mean, most people expect a main character to survive, so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in book two.
Yeah, no promises.
Right.
Not everyone going to survive. Now, we talked a little bit. We keep talking about Dale on the other character. I keep forgetting to go back to Cal. Now, you talked
right.
about a little bit about Cal and how he continues to grow as a dungeon.
Sure.
I assume more levels, more monsters, more things like that.
Yes.
So his story arc in that respect isn't, I assume, it's too different that in book one. It's just more expansive, and we get some more interesting twists upon the things that he can do. But I am curious about, again, we talked about this slightly, that he gets a peek into the outside world through the eyes of Dale, since they're now connected in that particular way. Does that influence how he designs his dungeon and the things that he does within his sphere of influence?
Well, I think that it's less a case of them working together for things. Like he doesn't really ride along with Dale. Like Dale works actually very hard to keep that murderous thing out of his head. Like that's the thing. Now, there is a fun little thing where I create a cult, a dungeon worshipping cult in the book, and they work really hard to make the dungeon powerful. But like kind of background story, it's not really like a hey up in your face or thing. So that's why I'm telling you, because it's not really a spoiler. It's just more of a it's more of a hey, this is going on. Should we be concerned about that sort of thing?
I keep trying to tease little details out.
Yeah, and that's fine. Cool. And I mean, these little things, they definitely won't ruin the story. I'm keeping like twists and everything else to myself. But it's definitely like he is just doing his best to survive, and well, let's be realistic. Cal is doing his best to kill him. So and there's good reason for it, and it's well explained. Like it's not just like a hey, I'm gonna kill you, and it's like no, you're gonna save me. No, I'm gonna kill you. No, it's not like that. It's like hey, I'm gonna kill you unless you have a really really good reason for me not to kill you.
Okay, so there's obviously a more complex, nuanced relationship between the two that benefits or detriment to each other.
Let's call it quid pro quo. Yeah, quid pro quo. Yes. It's definitely not a hey, let's be friends. It's a hey, I won't distract you when things are flying at your face if you'll do this for me. Well, I'm not going to do that for you unless you do this for me. Well, maybe we can work something out. That sort of thing. Yeah,
that makes sense. I'm super just curious, like how you're going to start influencing Cal through Dale, and I guess I won't spoil it. I know I just want to know because I'm a fan, I'm a reader, and all that good stuff as well. Okay, so let me move on to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is the secret evil boss that I kind of forgot I didn't read the first time through on the story in the ebook version because I didn't realize it was there. It's after like your author thank yous and stuff.
Yes.
Did you do that on purpose? I'm curious.
I did, yes. But I did write a thing right at the end there. It said end of book one, continue reading after this for the epilogue. Right? It said continue reading after the appendix for the epilogue. Well, I mean, we make monetary terms, we make 0.00532 cents per page read on Kindle Unlimited. Well, it's not going to hurt anyone to flip through like 5 or 6 extra pages through my appendix to get to the epilogue. And it was kind of funny for me to do that. Like in my mind, I thought that was funny.
I know it was when I realized what you did.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you did it because you sent me the physical book, which is a proof. And I think in this particular proof, it's done differently. Like your epilogue comes before your appendix. And so when I was looking through it, I'm like, hey, this is a whole new section. Did he cut this out or is it? And I looked back on my ebook. I'm like, no, he that tricky. And so I'm like, no, he did it differently in ebook on purpose. And unless you like go back and reread it, because I'm trained to stop reading at the appendix, so that's information I know, and I look at it if I need to look at it, and I don't go farther than that. And you you snuck this in and
I
to show
did.
people like there's this secret evil boss and you're not gonna know about it unless you go through the whole thing, guys.
Yeah,
So
read
like,
from front to end. Like, a lot of people didn't notice. I even put jokes in like the acknowledgement pages, stuff like that. Um, a lot of people didn't see that, and I thought like I put stuff in there because it's funny to me, and
yeah.
and I just
Yeah, so
I
you're
yeah.
one of those programmers who puts in Easter eggs everywhere
Oh,
just
all
for
over the
yourself to
place.
laugh at. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I get
yeah.
okay.
Yep. I mean, if you look at some of the pages I've designed, you'll see like ASCII art and like pterodactyls and random things. Um, just because you're waiting for stuff to compile, it takes a while.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, I know. I've done programming before. I hear exactly what you're saying. You got to kill those hours or those minutes or whatever it is,
right,
and you get to entertain yourself. So I
right.
understand that mentality.
Yeah. So the epilogue, the secret boss. So that's kind of an overarching storyline. Because the thing, how to put it, like I don't want this to turn into another, hey, this person is evil, you need to go kill him. That's not what I'm after. This is more of a, hey, this is going on, and this is kind of the driving factor between a few other things that are going on here that are affecting you. Like, hey, people are being randomly slaughtered outside of here, so um this seems like a safe place. We're gonna come here. And then it's gonna be like, well, hey, you can't be here unless you're gonna pay taxes. Hey, we don't want to pay taxes because you're not actually doing anything for us. Well, then I'll do things for you, and then will you pay me taxes? I mean, like, it's more of a driving factor and less of a hey, the evil necromancers are coming to kill you all. Like, if you read that, if you read the epilogue, um, I'm not saying that necromancers are the good guys. Like, that's that's definitely a hard sell. Like, hey, we dug up that graveyard and they go and kill people, so we're the good guys.
Just depends on the book series that you're reading,
Yeah,
I think.
it's hard to push that though. And but I really prefer to see shades of gray. I prefer to see like, hey, um, who knows? Maybe the necromancers are just a downtrodden class of society who have no way to even survive for a regular lifespan without access to necromantic cultivating or infernal cultivating technically. And um, maybe they are just trying to survive, and to do that, they have to push back against the kingdoms that have been pushing them down.
Right. No,
And
I think a lot of your book, you try to push against, you establish social norms and then you
mhm,
push against them
right,
in a lot of ways. And I like that about your stories, in that
thank you.
you're not just establishing a world and saying the people in power make all the rules and you live with it or you die.
Mhm,
You very much establish a sense of agency within your characters, saying that if they want to, they have that ability within this world. Now,
right.
game rules maybe not so much, but the social structures, absolutely, they of course are have to suffer the inevitable, realistic consequences of those behaviors and actions.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, let me rephrase it a little bit. The necromancers that you read in your epilogue, they are definitely not good guys. You know,
Okay.
like, hey, let's
See, I
go
just thought
and
maybe, okay, maybe he's making them like the ultimate recyclers. Like they love the earth. They want to make sure everything's reused as much as
right.
possible. So they, instead of just letting these bones go to waste and these, fertile essences, they shape them
Yeah,
into these dungeons and places for adventurers to come and have
yeah,
picnics.
yeah. Maybe they smash up the bones and they use them as fertilizer. I mean, bone meal is a really good fertilizer. Uh, no, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I like saying, I love theories. I love my theories, and I love other people's theories of my books, because sometimes I'll be like, oh damn, that's pretty good. Like, that's
Oh
not a
yeah, that's
bad
happened to me too.
idea.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. Yeah.
Right. And usually I'll comment and be like, hey man, that's a really good idea. I'm going to use that in the book. I hope that's okay. And usually they're like, oh my god, yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. And which is cool. Every once in a while, it's like, no response or whatever.
Mhm.
But another thing that I really like to do in the book is I have a policy that I call "Don't kill your babies." And I know that sounds a little grimmer than it is. Let me explain what I mean by that. You know how when you're going through a story and you're writing something and you're like, oh man, you know what, that just doesn't work. That's a terrible idea. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna go a totally different direction with that. I do something called don't kill your babies, right? So like you wrote to that point and you're like, you know what? Oh man, you know what? Suddenly this doesn't work in my mind. What I really like to do is I like to put that in the book. I like to be like, oh man, I tried this, but dang, that was just a terrible idea and it did not work. Like, wow, that was just dumb. I can't believe like that I had originally tried to do that. And then, but my favorite thing to do with that sort of thing is keep it there and then just say, crap, that didn't work. Oh no, that made this happen. Or, oh my gosh, like this was a horrible idea. Why would you do that? Or, something like that. And I can use that as minor plot points, but still funny things. Like I don't know if you remember the screaming rock in the first book.
Yes.
Like that was something I had a totally different plan for. Like I was gonna make that into something else that was going to be in my mind hilarious, and then I got to it and I was like, ah, yeah, that doesn't make sense anymore. But I kept it in there because I wanted to. Like I had
No,
originally wanted to
you
put it
basically
in.
acknowledge the character's ability to make mistakes and to learn from them instead of
Exactly.
just making them perfect
Right.
or having that great decision after great decision. Like that's not realistic.
Yeah.
People make mistakes.
Exactly.
They
All
plan
the
things
time.
or they theorize and it fails. And that to me is part of the greatness of science fiction and
Right.
science in general, and that you don't assume you know everything when you do an experiment.
Right.
You recognize you have a theory and you test it out, but you learn as much from your failures as you do from your successes in
Right.
science, and that's usually reflected in science fiction. I'm happy to see that it's coming into fantasy and that characters are allowed to make mistakes, and I think that
Yes.
is something that a lot of authors when they write, and it kind of stumbles them because their character's growth in some ways, and it certainly
Yep.
makes it harder for them as a storyteller to fill out a story if they're always going back and trying to find just that one perfect path for their
Right.
character instead of acknowledging that sometimes you veer to the left and sometimes you veer to the right, and eventually you're going to get to your goal, but it's sometimes a weirder and longer journey than you intended.
Right.
But that makes for a really great story, in my opinion.
Exactly. Like no one wants to say, "Hey, I went out to the bar and I picked up this lady and I came home and we had a good time and that was it." No, it's like, "Oh man, I went out and she splashed her drink in my face and I was really super sad because oh my gosh, like I was really feeling it that night and but then later on I met someone else and she was super nice and then we got married." Like
Yeah.
like better story than, half the other stuff like, "Oh yeah, well, I was 14 once and I told stories too." Like no one wants to hear your childish fantasies. They want to hear like a good story, and that's what I really try hard for. And I think that it's paying off pretty well. Like people seem to like it. I'm at like 230 reviews, and I think only about 19. Yeah, I think only about 19 of them are less than 5 star. So that's pretty awesome in my book. Not in
Good
my
for you, man.
literal
I
book,
think I'm at
but
120
yeah.
myself, and I
Yeah.
don't know how many are less than 3 star because I stopped looking. Like it
Oh,
really
there you go.
bothered
Yeah.
me personally when I read a 3 star review, and they had some criticism of me. It stuck with me for like days and days. I'm like, I'm just that type of person. And like if you tell me about like an error, like a spelling error or something, like, okay, that's
Mhm.
cool. Thanks for
Sure.
when you start criticizing like, oh, this guy's an idiot, and blah blah blah. And for some reason, I didn't realize I was the kind of person, but I
Mhm.
can't read those comments necessarily,
Sure.
unless it's from someone I trust and respect, obviously.
Sure.
But just like the random voice on the street saying "you're ugly," I'm like, am I ugly?
No, you have spectacular hair. Um, no, I'm just playing. But no, I mean like I don't mind the comments. Like something that I like is that I wrote the book for me.
Yeah,
Especially my first book. Like I wrote the book and I put in stuff that I thought was hilarious, and I wrote the story like I wrote the dialogue as I would talk to someone or as someone talks to me,
yeah.
and I wrote the combat as combat is freaky, man. Like it's some nasty shit. Pardon my mouth. I don't know how PG you
It's
like to
okay,
keep this.
man. I'm gonna change this to PG-13 rating, dude. But it's cool. It's worth it.
Sounds good. Yeah, like, but I mean, I mean, it's not cut and dry. It's like, I mean, if you stab someone or if you get like a arrow in you or something like that, that's not a pleasant experience for anyone. Like, um, monsters are flying at you, even if they're rabbits, but they have horns and they, break your bones if they hit you correctly. Um, that's not a pleasant experience. And
Oh, that's right. I forgot we both have horned rabbits in our stories too.
yeah. I see rabbits actually in a lot of stories, but usually it's like angry rabbits or jackalopes or random things like that. And um, I like the. I think it all stems from Monty Python. Pretty sure, like the crazy rabbit. Um, shoot, I was going somewhere with this. Like, oh yeah, the comments.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Comments,
no,
realism in your story. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't mind. I don't mind the lower reviews. I do mind people that are saying like, "Hey, man, I really liked your book. I thought it was great," and then they give you 3 stars. Um, like, I mean, because and the only reason that I actually mind that, like, normally I'd be like, "Oh, sweet, yeah, man, another review. That's great," but Amazon considers anything below 4 stars to be a negative review. So a 3-star review is actually a negative review. It's not like a, hey, I'm ambivalent toward your story. I thought it was good, but it wasn't great. Like, I thought it was good. Like, if you think it's good, give me a positive review.
Right.
And I think some of that might just stem from people not understanding that anything below 4 stars is a bad review, and not just in our opinion. Like, Amazon will you lose
Like their algorithms.
yeah, their algorithms really hit you hard for anything below 4. Like I said, I have 19 reviews that are below 5 star, and that puts me at like a 4.4 rating overall. Of like, and it's like, wait a second, that's not right. Like, even the math of that doesn't work out. Like, if it's just like a 90 percentile
If it's an
scale,
average,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like this is odd. But I think the reason for that is that any percentage, or if you have one comment, or if you have one review that's 1 star, what it actually is a it is considered 1%, no matter what. So it might say 0%, like you have 0% of these, but if you have at least one in that star rank, that's 1%. So since I have, three, I might have like 1 star, 2 star, and a 3 star. That's actually 3% off my top. And then the 4 star reviews, while good, they also they tend to bring down from the 5 star. So, like, I love all the reviews, but I just think that maybe not everyone is as informed as to like the
Okay, so you're
algorithms
basically
they use
saying
there.
that
Yeah,
each star, 4, 5, 3, 2, whatever, they're weighted differently than just the regular averaging
right.
of they normally would be.
Yes.
Okay, and
So
anything below 3 and below are weighted more when they're doing their algorithm calculations for your average than 4 and 5 stars.
not
Is
well,
that what you're saying?
no. Well, kind of. Like, okay, say I have 200 5 star reviews, and I have a single 1 star review,
Mhm.
right? That according to Amazon, I have 1% is a 1 star review, where
Right.
obviously that is not 1%. But
Correct.
right, but I mean, but until it gets to 20 reviews, that's still 1%. Like, so if I had all the way up to 19, and then I had 20 1 star reviews of that, that's still, well, 10% in that case. But um, like say 2,000 reviews, all of them 5 star except for 20. That's still just 1% until it rolls over. It goes, it's ceiling math. So it says like, whatever this is, it goes at least 8%.
Yeah.
So
Up
that's
until a
kind of how
certain
that
point,
works
and
out.
then it
Yeah.
changes as that ceiling raises for your
Hmm.
overall number of reviews, and
Right.
then that's weighted differently in each
Right.
particular category.
Right.
Okay, so that,
Right.
yeah, that, because I recently gave a guy like a 3 star review, thinking like, oh, that's just it, because it says on there when you press 3, it's okay,
Yeah.
as a reader and a viewer.
Hmm.
But
Right.
if Amazon's rating it differently, I guess I might have to change, because
Yep.
his story wasn't bad. It just
Hmm.
wasn't exactly for me.
Right.
Critical things that I put on his review was
Hmm.
like the first poster, and I'm like, I don't mean to like negatively impact his
Right.
story like overall, but like it wasn't as amazing as some, and it wasn't bad though. It was
Right.
really, for me, just like, okay, it's
Right.
fine, it's average,
Yeah.
it's not horrible, it's not bad,
Right.
so I give it a 3, thinking that that's what that means, and
Hmm.
apparently it's not
No,
to
yeah,
Amazon.
and if you look at your reviews, you'll see like top positive reviews, and then you can see like negative reviews, and most of the negative reviews are like are like 3 stars, and it's like, oh, so you consider that a negative review? I didn't consider. I said that I saw that as like, hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That was a pretty solid review. Like he had some issues with the book, but he liked the book and he gave me a pretty solid review. That's an average. I mean, that's a C right there, you know? I mean,
that's what I think of.
yeah. I mean, C's are great, you know? C's are fine. I'm good with C's. Since I'm not a doctor anyway, you know? I mean, like, I get to pray to Lord Google if I have questions. Most doctors shouldn't do that.
Knowing C in programming is a good thing.
This last semester I had 2 A's and a C. And that C I was actually super happy with because that put me in the top 5% of the class. Because it was formal languages and autonoma, which is it used to be the capstone class. Like it used to be like the last class you had to take because it was the most difficult, and now now it's just another class. So it's I felt really good with my like 79.3% on that because the average was 67 and then the mean was like 72. So yeah,
that's definitely better. So yeah, good for you.
Yeah, I felt pretty good about that. So, you know, I'm sure you know bell curves as well as I do there. So,
yeah, I mean, I used to grade kids and give them, you know, actual grade and establish those kind of things.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, that's familiar as a student and as the educator half of it.
Yep. Sure. Well, we're kind of away from the topic of the book there, but is there anything else like you'd like to know about? Like, I want to reiterate that I may have like been saying like talking about the dry parts of it, and a big reason for that is because the rest of it is pretty spoilerish. Like I really want to be like, oh yeah, like this is happening and it's just like amazing and it freaks me out. I can't believe I was the one that wrote that. Holy crap. You know, like but I can't say stuff like, oh man, there's such a great twist with Danny. You're going to love oh no, but I can't tell you. Or like Cal is doing this. Okay, so and yeah, you know.
We'll establish in advance that they're a twist with Danny, they're a twist with Cal, and they're a twist with Danny.
It's a very, man, this is like, it's a very twisty.
And we'll yes, I understand that you don't want to spoil it for anybody, but thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me about all these little details. I know details and systems and game mechanics and so that's I know we kind of delve into that, including like some author stuff, but a lot of authors and readers are just like us, you know. They LitRPG story readers tend to veer more towards that side because those are the things about RPG mechanics that we enjoy. We love min-maxing, we love understanding systems and how the worlds actually work in a very concrete way, because again, for myself, it's like I imagine myself in this world, like, would I do that, or would I go down this particular skill path? Would I be a glass cannon, or you know, would I go with the strength build, whatever the case is, depending upon the rules of the world and how you want to, maximize your effectiveness. But that's all very part of why we love the genre, and I've talked to people who come into the genre just as like as a commentator, or as somebody who comes from fantasy or urban fiction or romance or whatever the case is, and it's hard for them to understand that that's actually what we like,
right?
And they tend to kind of gloss over it and think, oh, this is what I like about it, and like I hate those mechanic things, so I skip those or sprinkle them lightly just to fulfill like the minimum quota of RPG-ness. And I'm like, no, that's you're understanding our group a little less than you think you do. I'm glad that you've done research, but obviously it's not quite enough. Because those are the things that a lot of us love a lot, and some people don't, but they just skip them when they read it. If you don't include them at all, you don't give people the option. And I'm like,
right. Like the book The Martian, obviously not a lit RPG, but I read through that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Someone else is like, why are you reading that technical manual? And I was like, no, that's not what this is.
I mean, it sort of is, but not really.
Well, I know it kind of feels like that when you're reading it, but at the same time, it's like, oh man, that's a really good point. I wonder if that is actually a feasible thing. And it's just fun stuff. But unless you have any other questions about the book, I should probably get going here.
No, I hear, man. I appreciate it. I know you got a lot of stuff to do, so thank you very much again for taking the time to talk to me.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
This is his book that's currently out. You can buy it in paperback if my camera can focus. We have Del Kraut, the Dungeonborn, the Divine Dungeon out in paperback, ebook. I can't remember if you're planning to do an audiobook at all.
Yes, it's in the works. Currently, they are on vacation for the holidays, so I believe it's in progress right now. So yes,
Awesome.
and
Okay, so
I
it's
do.
something else to look for.
Yes, and I have way back when on the LitRPG group and my own Facebook group, I posted a contest for anyone who wants a free copy of that. And I said that if you want a free copy, tell me why you want a free copy. Like, give me good reasons. Like, tell me, like, hey, I'm a truck driver and I'm on the road 12 hours a day and I spend $300 a day on books because I go crazy with boredom, or something like that. You know, like anything. Like, so far I've had, oh man, I shouldn't do that because I have money. Like that's like the top commenter right now. Like, I shouldn't do that because I can go buy one. And it's like, oh, come on, people. Like, I will happily, like, I like to think of myself as a nice guy. Like, I,
Give me a
yeah,
vague reason as to why I can give
right,
this away to you. That's all I'm
exactly,
looking for. Hint, hint,
pretty
nod,
much.
nod. Yeah.
Right. And another thing that I know that a lot of the authors watch your podcast, because I know I do. And I have a thing that I put up the other day that I'm hoping that it just didn't get much response because it was the holidays. But I'm really trying hard to collect authors' books and their signatures. Like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. The book exchange,
right,
right?
yes, and something that I would like I would directly buy your book and send it to you and have it sent back to me after signing it, and I'd be fine with that. But something I'd prefer to do is buy my book, sign it, maybe give you a message and send it to you, and then get one in return from you. And yeah, there's a little bit of trust factor on my end because I'm going to be sending you a book or whatever, and not you specifically. Like, you just get the books, you're fine. Um, but I would love to get a collection of the lit RPG authors, and be like, hey, like, this is Aileron Kong, like, this is the land right here, and I have the whole thing, and I have it all signed. And in 10 years down the road, when he's like, the next J.K. Rowling or whatever, I can be like, hey, these books right here, yeah, I'm sitting on like $12,000, or whatever.
You can auction them off for charity to a good cause at that point if we need
No,
to.
but I would probably just hold on to them, like, just because,
Like
yeah,
these are
just
to me, it's like these are my friends' books, aren't they awesome? Kind of
right,
thing. And I honestly thought about like participating, like, but I don't have any physical copies of my book. I have them available on Amazon, but I
right.
never ordered a physical print. So I'm like, okay,
Oh,
I plan to like order like I don't know a dozen copies once I get my
sure.
first royalty thing going on,
Hmm.
because I'll have money at that point.
Right. Hopefully, yeah.
From the
That's the
system.
dream
Yeah, cross
anyway.
my fingers. And then I can order like 6 or 7 and just like send them out to various authors or as like a some contest reward or whatever it is.
Right.
But at that point, I'm like, okay, then I'll have something. But right now, I know other authors when they do their physical books, they ask for physical prints. I'm just not
Hmm.
one of them. I'm like, I just hope it looks okay. I did the digital print approval, and I just assume I'm hoping that that's accurate.
Right. Yeah. I think I waited 2 weeks after putting out my book, my first book, so that I could get all of those people calling me and being like, "Hey, man, like, I found an error here," and then so the physical books are like have all those errors fixed. That's
Yeah,
yeah. That's what I did, and it was pretty fun. Um, it's nice because the Create Space thing, the Amazon printing company, they print them on demand, but the
yeah.
downside to that is obviously that they cost a little bit extra money to people that want to purchase them. And I think I tried to alleviate that a bit by I shrunk in my book. I shrunk the text size and the line spacing
Mhm.
to just really smaller, a lot smaller than I had it, and it still was over 500 pages. So yeah,
Yeah, like my
yeah,
minimum print costing is like something like $10
yeah.
at base cost. I think it's
Mhm.
11 or 12 if I'm in like the library system for some reason, which is weird to me.
Yep.
And so my book could cost something like I think it's like $13 or $14 or something. So I make more in the digital half than I do in the print version. It's more there for like, oh, in case you're kind of reader who loves a physical copy of something, this
Mhm.
is for you. I it barely makes me anything. So, but this is
Yep.
more for like the fans of the fans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that's the same thing. Like, I put the royalty margin at just basically nil. Like, like you said, I
Mhm.
make more off the digital copy than I do the book, which is fine with me because there's no associated cost with, the book. Like, there's no delivery
Right.
charge, there's none of
As it
that.
should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm like, hey, cool. So I get $2 per book sold or something like that. And
Right, which is why the physical book exchange makes so much sense as like a special reward
right,
among like authors. It's like
right,
we all love each other's books. We would like
right.
to have these on our mantles or
And
our
we're already
bookshelves
not
if we
making a
still have
profit
them.
off them.
Yeah, so we might as well not make a profit together, and that way
Right.
kind of equalizes out. But we still get a physical copy of our friends. At this point, I consider you my friend, and all the other
Yeah,
authors I've talked
absolutely,
to
man.
as like friends. And I can see my bookshelf like these are all my friends. These are all their books, and I'm among them.
Yes.
We have this thing in common. This is why we love each
Mhm.
other in our genre.
And I'm looking I'm looking for that first LitRPG meetup. We'll all come out to California or something and just
Yeah,
hang out at your
I
house.
this year I plan to go to. I know last year Alaron did a lit RPG meetup around Dragon Con in Atlanta,
Oh,
Georgia.
he actually did.
I
Oh,
don't know.
that's cool.
I don't
Oh,
know
I was
if
making a
too many
joke. I
people
didn't.
showed up. No, he put up a Kickstarter for it. I think he funded most of it at the end. Like I chipped in like $20. I know other people chipped in like a 20, 10, a dollar here and there. But I think his funding goal was like a little bit higher. I think at the end he's like, oh wait, that's right. This thing has to fund before the money goes through. And so I think he kind of filled up a lot of it. He's a doctor, so
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hand waving.
I'm not super bad about it. But he actually did it, and in Atlanta, Georgia, and he set it around Dragon Con because he figured, okay, people are probably going to come into town for that convention anyways. So I believe it was like on a Saturday for Dragon Con, and he rented out a whole bar. He set up like a whole food thing, and free beers for everybody.
Right.
And I think Travis Bagwell went, and a couple of of the local people near Atlanta went. But from the pictures I saw, I don't know that it was like a huge turnout necessarily.
Right.
Which I mean, I'd wanted to go personally.
Right.
That's why I chipped in like 20, but I don't have money. It cost me from California. Like it would cost me like $3,000 to go to do that thing from California, as well as airfare, finding a hotel for like 3 or 4 days. Because I figured, hey, if I'm there anyways, I'm gonna go for Dragon Con, and the Dragon Con portion of it is like the cheapest part. It's like $40 for the weekend or something to attend that con there. But the rest of it's like hotel and staying and food and whatever. And this year as an author, I have the extra cash because people have bought my book. I'm like, okay, I can actually do it this year, and I think it's a tax write-off as an author. So
there you go.
I can actually attend. I just have to work out the work schedule thing.
Oh yeah, so and I mean, yeah, exactly.
I believe he's planning it. I don't think he's announced it anywhere because it's a little early in the year. I think we'll probably like say something about it like closer towards. I think it's a May or June event in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, I know you got things to do, so I'll wrap it up real quick. Thank you again for talking to me today about your book coming up. It is again called Dungeon Madness, the second book in your Dungeon Born series. Your tentative release date is February 2017, pending editing and cover art stuff and all that wonderful things that are sometimes out of your control. So hopefully, that deadline comes through in February sometime. I won't say early February. Just say February, and that way people don't get nerd raged if it doesn't quite come through when they think it's going to come out. But
well,
again,
I'll be the one that's upset. I'll be more upset than anyone else if it doesn't come out. So, again, thank you all, and check out my newsletter on my Facebook account. Like I said, my newsletter on there. I post stuff there all the time, and of course, you all know I'm hilarious. So there's always good stuff there. But thank you so much for having me on today, Ramon, and I look forward to talking with you again. And it doesn't always have to be here. We can just chat and let's see what happens. But thank you again, and have a great day. And Happy New Year's.
Oh, thank you very much, and I wish you a Merry Christmas, which is past, and a Happy New Year's in the future, because we're recording this exactly in between those two things. So Thank you very much for your time. And again, everyone who's watching and listening, we're gonna, all the links we can find Dakota in our show notes for everybody, Amazon, Facebook, anywhere else that you can find them, of course. It'll be in the show notes for you, so you guys have all the information there. But in the meantime, folks, thank you very much for listening to me and my friend talk about the things that we love, his book especially. And the next time we see you folks, until then, remember to lit RPG.